I'm Meager, and I'm one of the team of volunteers that organizes Theater Lovers Club. And I'm thrilled to say I see a lot of familiar faces that I know well, and a few faces that I don't know. So for those of you who I don't know, you may wonder what exactly is Theater Lovers Club. And so very briefly, I'll say, a group has got together and said, theater is really blossoming in this town, but theater can't grow if audiences don't grow. And audiences don't grow unless they know about what's happening in theater, and better yet, know what makes it happen, which of course is playwrights and actors and costume people. And so we decided to form a little organization entirely from donations to pay for space rental and so forth to help audience. I know some of you are professionals, but right now you're audience, to help audience members really feel a part of what happens in theater, know the people that make it happen. So that's what Theater Lovers Club is. What's coming up next? We do two main things. One of the things, generally on the second Tuesday of each month from 6 to 7, we have Theater Lovers Club talk. Like this evening, we're going to be hearing from some very talented playwrights about why write short plays. You know that because that's why you're here. We just finished having, last month, we had a playwright reading where audience members, everyone came and got to read a script. We divided it into different groups, and 12 different playwrights got to have either a whole play or a short play read by audience members who then gave feedback on it. We'll be doing that again next year sometime, 6 months from now, as soon as we recover from this one. The second, and a month from now, the second Tuesday of next month, we'll be exploring costumes. What it takes to make costumes with we have some amazing costume makers, one of whom I see. Did you see those lizards?
Yes.
Are you going to bring one of those?
I'm going to try. I haven't asked for it yet.
Well, we have amazingly talented people, and audiences tend to be fascinated by what goes into costuming. So that will be the second Tuesday of April. The second thing we do is we have what we call TLC Steps Out. And they're nights that we work with the theater, and the theater says, come this special night. And the next thing we're doing is Virginia Woolf, which I imagine most of you have heard of. Very dynamic play with, I understand from people who said, a stunning group of actors and actresses. And on the matinee, on Sunday the 15th, thank you.
16.
On Sunday the 15th, we're having a TLC Steps Out.
This Sunday.
That's just a few days from now, this coming Sunday. And so the theaters work with, they give us something special. So we're going to be having a talk back afterwards, because I remember the first time I saw Virginia Woolf, I said, oh my God, I gotta talk about this.
And drink should be involved.
So to me, talkbacks are absolutely wonderful. That's a part of what the theaters do for us, to help you as audience understand what they just saw, get to talk to the actresses, ask some questions, actors. And so come this Sunday to Virginia Woolf at the Actors Lab. Then on next month, after you've met these playwrights, you're going to want to see their plays. And on the 12th,
11th and 12th.
11th and 12th.
And 12th. Oh, and you just happen to have,
I sent it first,
you happen to have one. The plays, the short plays that these people have written are going to be performed. And we're having a TLC Steps Out Talkback on the Sunday performance, again with the talkback afterwards. We have a TLC Steps Out. And we're going, quite often we do a Steps Out. You know, there are single people in this town that say, oh, I don't like to go to the theater by myself, but I want to get to know other people. So quite often after matinee performances, then we go someplace and have a pizza or a bite of lunch so that we get to know other theater people. And we will be having a social event. You can always find out about it by going to, of course, Talia here is the leader of Theater Santa Fe. Go to the Theater Santa Fe website, which is just Theater Santa Fe, theater spelled R-E, santafe.org. Scroll across to the little red heart, Theater Lovers Club, and you can see all the details about everything that's going. So with that, we had Aaron, who is a playwright himself, and last year did a wonderful panel with a group of actors and actresses, and he's back now with the people who create the words and the ideas and the thoughts that the actors and actresses bring to us. And so we're so glad you agreed to do this again for us, Aaron. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you.
And he will introduce your playwright.
Yeah, so a big thank you to the Theater Lovers Club and Theater Santa Fe for supporting what we do in this little community of ours. And we do have a lot of playwrights here, a lot of actors, a lot of directors, a lot of wonderful creative people. And we need support, we need audiences. So thank you for everything that you do, Theater Santa Fe and Theater Lovers Club, to support our work and to support the community here at large. So I've been writing short plays for over 40 years. That's how old I am and how long I've been doing it. So we're going to be addressing why write short plays and what does this form actually mean structurally and in terms of opportunities for playwrights around short form versus full-length plays. All of the panelists here write for both lengths, and so they have a lot to say about how they structure their plays differently and what kind of experiences they've had in terms of getting their work produced in both forms. It occurred to me when I wanted to do this panel that there's no great recognition for short play form the way that there is for other kinds of short works. Short films get nominated for Oscars. A lot of very prominent fiction writers are known for their short stories, Flannery O'Connor, F. Scott Fitzgerald, to name a few. But there's no Tony Awards for short plays, and there's no Obie Awards that I know of either. And you don't see short plays performed on Broadway. Occasionally, if you're Nora Ephron or Neil Simon back in the day, you might have. And why is that? Is that because they're not considered commercially viable? And what does that even mean? And is that the reason why we do plays in the first place? But does that mean they're even a lesser form of writing? And I've heard sort of back in the day, because I've seen the evolution of sort of the short play culture morph over the years. I remember years ago going to the Valdez Theater Conference, which a lot of people on this panel have participated in, and hearing this playwright kind of poo-poo short plays as like a lesser form of things. If you have a short play in a festival, that's not such a big deal. And I've even heard that from people in my family. Why is that? I'm going to give you an example. So the play Trifles by Susan Glaspell was written in 1916. It is considered one of the most significant plays in American theater, performed in Provincetown initially, yes. And it runs about 20 minutes long, half an hour long. Short plays also exist as literature, as well as theatrical productions. So to say that they're not significant or can't be significant, I don't think is really accurate, but we're going to be talking about the difference between how you develop short works versus full length, and the difference in getting your work seen and how that's changed for people over the years. So I have three main questions that I'm going to be addressing the panelists, and we'll get in as much as we can in an hour, but we're 7 people with a lot to say, so wish us luck. I'd like to introduce our distinguished panelists. Oh, and before I do that, we're going to be making some very quick announcements at the end of the panel today about short classes around short play writing, as well as productions, the one that Mim just mentioned, and to sort of just talk about where you could look for to see short plays. So I'm going to start on my immediate stage left with Marguerite Louise Scott. Marguerite started writing plays while studying and working as an actor in New York City in the 1980s, and has had her work produced in various theater and alternative spaces around the country. She is currently focusing on creating and workshopping a series of short, darkly comic monologues addressing social issues that she plans to develop into a solo show. Marguerite is also experimenting with mixed media visual art that incorporates a variety of materials found in nature. She is a proud member of the Dramatists Guild and Honor Roll, which is an activist group for female identifying playwrights over 40. To her left is Talia. Pura, is a Santa Fe-based stage and film actor, writer, director, designer, and producer. And that's just a few of the things she does. Her plays, films, and aerial dance performances have been seen around the world. She has conducted workshops and devised theater across Canada, the US, and in Brazil, Sri Lanka, South Africa, and the Philippines. She has published numerous plays, drama teaching resource books, a picture book, and 2 books of monologues for actors. And then next to her is Vicki Meager, a playwright living in Albuquerque and a co-facilitator of the Albuquerque Theater Guild Playwright Circle. She's written 12 full-length plays and has had many short plays produced in various states. She recently finished the first draft of her novel, Mother Yucca. Her full-length play, Cat's Pajamas, was produced by Teatro Paraguas in October of 2023. Oh, there's Bill. And next to her is Bill Triplett, playwright, journalist, and author, now living in Santa Fe after more than 30 years in Washington, D.C. His plays, which tend to draw from history, myth, or the latest social media post he saw, have been read, developed, or produced in theaters from New York to California. He's a lifetime member of the Dramatists Guild of America and a former D.C. bureau chief for Variety, and the author of 2 nonfiction books.
And you have to be really old to be a lifetime member.
Otherwise, it doesn't count. Daniel Guy Husson is a playwright, dramaturg, director, and founding artistic director of the On and Off Theater Workshop. He received 2 MLITs in playwriting and dramaturgy in 2018 and creative writing in 2019 from the University of Glasgow. His play Beneath premiered at the Edinburgh Theatre Festival Fringe 2022 and was a Fringe recommended show. As a reaction to the world we live in, his writing veers into the absurd. Hear, hear. And Rosemary Zibart, your timing is perfect, a former journalist, now writes plays, screenplays, and books, and has written in many genres. She started in television, then wrote feature articles for magazine and newspapers, including Parade and the Christian Science Monitor. She's written award-winning middle grade novels, picture books, plays, and screenplays. Her short plays have been featured in festivals in Santa Cruz, Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Denver, to name a few. Her full-length plays have been produced and been finalists at festivals across the country, including Seattle, Long Beach, New York, and here in Santa Fe. Okay, so I'm in a kind of interesting position because I've been writing plays for a long time, but also for the last 20 years or so, I've been a curator for festivals, both for film festivals and also I've produced my own theater festivals, like the one coming up in April. So I've gotten to read a lot of short works and also see a lot of short films. And so I've sort of developed I've developed these kind of categories that I've seen a lot of short plays fall into. And there's many categories, but these are just 3 that I've seen more regularly. There's the short play that's developed in a very conventional structure, very much like a full-length play with a 3-act structure, where you have an exposition, you have a rising action, you have a climax, you have the falling action and resolution, all in however long your short play is. Then I've seen the kind of moment in time play, which is maybe just like a conversation between 2 people that maybe doesn't have a conventional beginning, middle, and end, but is more representing a sort of point in time between 2 or 3 or however many characters. Then there's also the kind of like sketch comedy plays, where the punchline is like a joke, and then again, and those are done in like variety shows and different kinds of events. There's many different kinds of short plays, but those are the ones that I've sort of readily seen. And I also want to talk about what we mean by short plays, because that can mean a lot of things. How short is short? Well, more often than not, when people are advertising short play festivals, they mean 10-minute plays. Those are very common, and you see those a lot in calls for short plays. You know, it can be 10 or 12 pages, but it has to run 10 minutes because they want to do an evening of like 8 short plays in a program, which gives the audience a lot of great variety for content. But there's also micro plays, which are 1 minute long, 30 seconds long, 5 minutes. And then there's 1-act plays, and 1-act plays technically can mean like 11 minutes to over an hour. Like the play Suddenly Last Summer by Tennessee Williams is actually considered a 1-act play, even though it's really, people think of it more as a full length. But there's no like standard for what I mean by short plays. Like in the Oscars, if your film is under 39 minutes, it's a short film. If it's more than that, it's not for the Oscars. So there's no real standard, but generally when we talk about short plays, we're talking about the 10-minute form more regularly. So when I first started taking playwriting, my teacher, who was a prominent playwright, said, you should always write your short plays like you would your full-length plays. There's no difference. You should structure them the same. And as I mentioned, there's many different kinds of structures, especially now. But for me, in my own writing of short plays, the ones that I've structured conventionally are the ones that I've had the most success with in terms of reaching audiences and what I've been satisfied with. So I'm going to be asking the panelists how they structure their short plays differently than their full-length plays, if there is a difference. And Talia, I'm going to start with you. I meant to mention Talia has to leave early. She does so many things that I don't know how she has time to do everything she does, but we'll excuse her when she has to go. You've written a lot of different content. You have a large body of work. How do you decide if you get an idea whether it's going to work best in a short form or a longer form, or do you decide that before?
I guess I decide, but I'm looking at it and it generally will tell me how long it needs to be. I generally will just write, and when it's finished, it's finished. And then I'll start massaging it. If I know I'm entering it into a 10-minute contest, then obviously it's got to be down there. But frequently the ideas kind of present themselves, and obviously in a long form play, you can bring in more characters, you can bring in more subplots, and more things are happening. With a 10-minute play, if I set out to write a 10-minute play, it's going to be limited in characters, probably no more than 3, and it's still, I generally follow the structure you're referring to with beginning, middle, and end. I just know that it's only dealing really with one thing. If you can slip in one additional tiny thought, some of you might have been at the Fearless Female Voices Festival on Sunday, where we had 14 short plays, many written by people sitting with me here today too. And they were mostly in that format, with some monologues as well. But I feel generally that a play needs to be as long as it is, and when it's done, then you stop and you don't try to sort of fluff it into something longer, or vice versa. I will say though that as a sort of an academic exercise, sometimes just for fun, I take a full-length play and I see what it would look like in a 10-minute. Most of my full-length plays have 10-minute versions. Many of them also have 20, 25-minute versions, because they're just kind of ready for anything. And it's fun to play with that structurally. What can I shave off? What does it look like if I take out that subplot? What if I don't take out any subplots? Is the full-length play really that overwritten that I can do it all in 10 minutes? It's just a fun exercise. But I found that that I've had opportunities with some of those plays that really also have. It's not instead of the full length, it's just in addition to.
And it's interesting you said that, because when I've had to shorten plays to make it for a 10-minute festival, I'm amazed that I can do the same thing in 10 minutes that I could have. But it's hard. That's why, like, I think, you know, minimizing the process of writing short plays is problematic, because it's hard to have the same impact in 10 minutes when you just don't have that much time. You've maybe 1 or 2 plot points, as you said, not 5 or 10. Bill, I'm going to kind of do this popcorn style. Bill, you said we were in a discussion group, I think, recently, and you said that you started writing short plays later. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
Which is kind of interesting, because it's kind of almost the opposite of what a lot of people do to sort of test the waters.
I was of the, a 10-minute play, are you kidding? Why would I waste my time? And then I actually tried to write one, and I found, A, how difficult it is, and B, I started realizing that the market was changing, and it was a lot easier to get a 10-minute play looked at, read, and produced than it was to get a full one. And that motivates a lot of playwrights I know. They sort of write these 10-minute plays as an entree to a producer or some organization that might say, gee, we like what you have here, you got anything, you know, longer or something like that. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I know playwrights who have been produced quite widely with short plays, and they've never gotten their longer plays produced, so who knows. But yeah, I came to it later, almost as a matter of, I thought, was necessity. And then as I started working in the field, so to speak, I realized it was for me anyway, it was a completely different aesthetic. The structure for me is different. It's compressed. You have things, it's really stripped down. There's no time for exposition, because you've ever heard the term, if you took an English class called in medias res, you know, it's in the middle of something. And then if you're good, you will find ways to drop in just enough exposition as the situation is happening that people will get the larger context. But there's just not enough time. And for me, it's one moment that you're building to, whereas in a full length, it's got a lot of moments because you got a lot more to say. So it's very focused. I look at it almost like a haiku. And if you've ever tried to write haiku, you know, it's really easy to do them bad. It's not, you can do 10 of them before you leave here. That probably won't be, you know, very good. But if you really want it to sing, so to speak, it takes work.
Marguerite, I wanted to ask you about your pieces because you've been doing these one-person performances, sort of combining performance art with stand-up comedy, with personal narrative, with politics. Do you envision the pieces that you're doing as plays per se in the conventional sense, or are you redefining what plays are in terms of their structure, or in terms of the kind of work that it is? Like, do you see these as short plays, like the ones that you did Sunday per se, or?
It's interesting because I think I'm redefining myself right now, in a good way. And part of that is a reaction to what Bill spoke to, the limitations of, you know, limited opportunities to get a full-length play produced, and there's even, you know, more limited opportunities for 10-minute plays to get produced, because there's so many people writing them, and kind of less opportunities. But so many theaters closing, some theaters changing what they choose to offer. Fortunately, you know, here in Santa Fe, we're keeping that alive, right? And I love that. So I don't think of them as plays so much. I think they are a mix of kind of all different forms that I've worked with. And I'll mention the reason, I didn't know why I put in about my visual art stuff that I'm doing right now. I think because I want to own it. But my visual artwork is very much collage-ish with mixed media. And I see a lot of my work, my longer pieces, as collages. And I think of my solo, ultimately this solo show is kind of a solo show, a collage of different kind of issues and probably styles. I have the one piece already leaking, which I did at last year's Fearless Female Voices, which is kind of, I don't consider it stand-up comedy or performance art. It's a monologue, right? And so I can really use my skills as a playwright and an actor with that. There may be some sections of it that are more kind of, it might feel like more like a kind of a short dramatic piece. Some might be more kind of stand-up performance art. Yeah, I don't know because it's not done yet. I'm experimenting. And that's, you know, I've studied a lot of different things, you know, styles, and it's both with acting and writing. And I think I'm just kind of playing, you know, freeing myself up, because we have so many constrictions on us right now, and particularly what's happening in politics. I really feel the urge to break away from that in some way.
Rosemary, I'm going to go to the end now. I can't see you, but I know you're there. Because you do a lot of different kinds of writing. I know a lot of us do also. But I'm curious, for you, why you do write short plays? Like, what do you, you know, based on your journalism and children's books and all these other things you write, why you continue to write in that form, and how you write in that form in terms of what the process is for you, different than the other things that you write.
Well, first of all, I'm really not writing mini short plays. Because why? Because short plays are to me one idea and one location, and you know, just the possibility of exploring that for 10 minutes. I just have a lot more to say, and so I need to, put that out in longer form. And you can't, I try to do everything, but you can't do everything, so the thing that slipped off the radar is, the only short play I've written recently is Oy Vey the play, which I wrote for your festival just because I wanted to. But again, let's see, how can I describe the difference? I love to, whatever I'm writing, I love to do it. And they all have their gifts. Sorry, I'm chewing on a coffee. But let's see.
We can come back to you too, because we have more to say, so I do want to, yeah.
I just want to respond to that because, I was thinking about the short play thing, and I find 10-minute plays very, very challenging. And when the Santa Fe Playhouse used to do the Bench Warmer series, I would write to that, write to have something to submit. And I kind of only really write 10-minute plays now if it's for a submission opportunity. And sometimes I fail to get it done so I don't submit. But I find that I too I can nail a 15-minute play. And I have several 15-minute plays, 18-minute plays, 20-minute plays, but that 10 minutes is a bugger. And I applaud anybody that can do them well and do them frequently and, get them up there. So maybe that's too why I'm doing solo pieces.
Dan, I wanted to ask you about your company because you do audio theater, which I'd like you to talk about because audio theater, like with podcasts, it had this renaissance during COVID. And now there's a lot of short works being done in audio theater. And I'm curious if you could talk about from your company what you're doing with the short form in terms of audio.
Yeah, so we do one Shakespeare a year. We did a Chekhov one year, and we always do a short thing that I call sound bites. So we have 3. There's going to be a 4th one coming up soon. And I take submissions from all over the place. Rarely is it any of my work in the short program. But I think what's tough is when you choose to start the story in a short play, and I think you were kind of talking about that. Is the way I think of it is it's got a late point of attack. You don't have time to set up the real world. The upside down world needs to start at the beginning. The conflict has to start immediately, or you don't have enough time to tell the story you're trying to tell. And if anybody wants to hear some good short plays, come to onandoffworkshop.com. You can listen to all of them. That's kind of all and for me, writing myself, I haven't done as many short plays lately, but when I do, it's kind of that moment in time one you were talking about, because it's all about playing with the dialogue for me. And that moment in time, I think, it allows me to do that.
Yeah.
Instead of a full kind of arc of the story. That's just what interested me at the moment.
Well, and it is something that you can do with a short work, whereas if you're watching a 90-minute play with 2 people talking, and there are many plays like that, and films, My Dinner with Andre, of course, which are interesting, but it is something that can almost work best in that short format because we don't need the conventional story for the length of time. Vicki, I'm going to sort of morph what I want to talk to you about with sort of the next question, which has to do with opportunities, but because I know that you focus a lot of your productions on local opportunities, and you have an email list, telling other writers about local New Mexico opportunities, and I'd love for you to talk about, focusing on the local, what's going on here, but also for you to answer the same question that everyone else did about why you choose still to write short plays, even though you've had many, novels, you're writing a novel and full length.
Okay, well, I started writing plays in 2013, and I had 2 full-length play ideas, and I did not even know about the 10-minute play world. So I started writing my full lengths in April 2013, and the next month I went to the Boston Theater Marathon, which shows 50, at the time, they have a different format now, 50 plays all day long, 10-minute plays, starting at noon and ending at 10 o'clock at night. And I was gobsmacked by how wonderful some of them were. They were just fantastic, even 10-minute musicals. So for 5 years, I saw all 50 of those plays. I've seen hundreds of 10-minute plays. So I started writing my own plays, and there were festivals, and so I got some produced. And some people I know, some playwrights just do nothing but write 10-minute plays, and they go on for submission ops. They look for submission ops every morning. They wake up and look for them, and they send their plays everywhere, and they have a lot of plays done. They don't even write full-length plays if they ever even wanted to. Now I just focus on the local. I would like the New Mexico theater scene to be more vibrant, as we all would.
Mhm.
So the more plays that are submitted by New Mexico Playwrights, I feel like the more interest there will be, and so that's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to just jump in, and I don't wanna be putting down that form, because I thought that's how I got started with 10-minute plays. And really, I believe you have to do the same, you go through the same process to write a 10-minute play, and the fact that you have an idea, you try to figure out how to get it out there in the simplest way possible. You have to have something happening on the stage. It can't be something that they're referring to. And so it's the best way you possibly can to learn your chops, I think, as a playwright, is in this abbreviated form. And the only thing I have is that, like on Sunday, there were a couple of plays, or at least one, that the person who wrote it was obviously thinking in terms of a screenplay, where you have 3 sentences, and then you have another 3 sentences, and then you have another 3 sentences. And I think that it's very hard to do that. It's better if you just have one idea and you try to develop that.
Yeah, well, it's funny you said that, because I went to film school and was writing feature screenplays, and then when I went back into doing theater, a lot of my plays, people were like, you can't have 10 short scenes in a 20-minute play. I mean, you can, but it's very hard to pull off, because I was thinking in terms of that
It's hard
form.
for the audience to catch up
Yes.
with you. The
Yeah.
audience that you have for a play is different than
Yeah.
the audience that you have for a film. Or they just don't catch on that quickly, so you have to move at a different pace.
But I liked what you said, Rosemary, though, about it has to be happening now. And that's what my playwriting teacher said, is if you just don't have time to be recollecting, like Eugene O'Neill or something, where it's 3 hours. You just don't have that time, so it has to be right now. Yeah, Marguerite.
Oh, I was gonna say, my full-length plays tend to be larger casts, like 8. What I love about the 10-minute play and short plays is you can really examine 2 characters, right? And which is, I think, for me, I can't imagine me writing a 2-character full-length play. There are some wonderful ones out there. But for me, I see it as an opportunity to really kind of get to the heart of a relationship or an incident that involves people, occasionally a third. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because theater's changing, plays are changing, and I'm curious if the short form, in terms of the kind of plays that are being done, are changing too, in terms of structure, and everyone's talking about structure, doing different kinds of structure. So that's probably why I want us to have this dialogue about, do you structure or short plays being structured differently than they used to be, people thinking differently in terms of that. But I want to sort of go into something that Bill was sort of talking about in terms of opportunities for short plays, and how it can be sometimes easier. I know when I was in film school, and we would talk to these producers, and they're like, no one has time to read your 20-page treatment, send me a 5-minute film. And now that's too long. So but opportunities, and something Marguerite said about the number of plays that are being written and submitted now, it seems like because of the internet, it's very easy to access these submission opportunities in a way that it didn't used to be. So now when you submit to a festival, you get, they get 1,000 submissions, and then they have to cut it off. you know, for the program that I'm doing in April, which I'll talk about at the end, you know, I'm not a known entity in the country. Some people know about me here in Santa Fe, maybe New York. But, you know, I put a call out and started getting inundated with plays, and I was like, stop! Because, you know, like between this group here, we probably have like 10 plays, short plays each we could submit. That's just, and there's other people in the audience too. Right, and so it's gotten very hard, and I think festivals, what they're doing now is that they're changing in terms of making the festivals more thematic. It used to be short play festival, come and see 8 short plays. Now it's like they're very specific in terms of the theme, whether they're celebrating certain groups of people or certain themes or certain topics. And part of the reason they do that, I can say from experience, is because otherwise it's just too much. But also, the audience is getting a sense of what they're going to go see. We're going to see 8 short plays written by, you know, BIPOC writers. So that's interesting to me, rather than just 8 short plays. What is that going to look like? So, but I'm curious how people have felt that opportunities have changed for short play writers, and also in terms of, in contrast to full-length plays, if you've had differing kinds of success with that, Vicki.
Yeah, the plays have definitely changed since 2013, 14, 15.
Yeah.
It used to be that a lot of the plays had good sound effects, I mean, really interesting use of, they were total theater pieces, they were plays, but they had a lot of visual elements. And now, so many submission opportunities say, you know, minimal sound.
No, nothing, yeah.
You know,
There's stage.
minimal
They
characters,
want
they
fair.
just
Yeah.
want.
No props.
Move it on off the stage. Very
And if you can do it with no actors, great.
Yeah.
Even better.
AI theater actors.
Oh, don't say that.
I know.
Hey, don't laugh.
Shush, shush, shush. Bite your tongue.
So, yeah, that's.
Thank you, Talia. Okay.
And I do miss those older, the plays like 10 years ago that were
Yeah.
just wonderful. The sound was wonderful, and I used to write plays for that kind of medium, and now I just write easy to stage plays.
Yeah.
In just the 7-8 years that I've been writing 10-minute plays, I've seen the calls get narrower. It's usually, as you said, it's much more specific. And in, at least in the last 4 or 5 years, there has been quite an emphasis on social justice themes, things that would now be termed negatively from the White House as a DEI type of play, but interest in marginalized voices in people. There's still some calls that'll say, anything you want to write about, just send us whatever you got. But I've seen more and more, it just gets more and more specific.
And a lot of them are like, we want plays from Idaho, or we want
Right.
Yes,
plays for,
very location
Middle
specific.
Tennessee, or
Yeah,
whatever. I
yeah.
mean, Vicki, I haven't seen that yet. Vicki and I both come from Middle Tennessee. And you never see any play, you don't see any calls for that.
There was that Oklahoma one that you shared, that just anywhere that borders Oklahoma, so we all, because we border Oklahoma by this much, we all send stuff. You know?
My least favorite restriction are family friendly only, no profanity, because I have nothing to submit.
There you go.
Right, Marguerite?
Yeah, one of the reasons I don't submit, like, online, my short stuff, is that, unless it's a particular something that really says, oh, I've gotta, like, submit, well, I've got something perfect and I really, like, love this company or whatever, I'd like to see them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I like to see them, and often, you know, I'd love to be there for rehearsal, I'd love to make any changes, you know, if, that's what excites me about the process and what I loved about the bench warmers every year. So I don't, you know, and the older one gets, at least for me, the more like I feel like, where do I really want to spend my time? And I want to spend as little time online as
Yeah.
possible. So looking up, you know, places, and I'm not somebody who really can afford to just travel all over the place if I get a 10-minute play, you know, produced somewhere. And I don't even really want to right now. So I tend to really look for local, you know.
Well, I think I'm driving to Clovis or something.
Good for you.
You might never come back.
I would drive to Clovis.
Yeah.
Well, there was a they wanted a youth play, and I happened to have one youth play, and I sent it in, and it got in. I don't think it is Clovis, but it's something like like 5 hours away. But I'm definitely gonna
Excellent.
go see it.
I mean, I used to be able to travel a lot more, and I used to go see my play in, short plays, because I was new at it and it was exciting. And not that I'm over it now, but I don't have the opportunity to do so. But it can be hit or miss. I mean, if you don't have control over the production, you could travel to New York to go see it, and you're like, oh my God, what did they do? Well, that was a waste. I mean, you're in New York, so it's fine. But if you're going somewhere really remote where that's the only reason you're going, and it doesn't go well, it's a little disappointing, more than a little disappointing. So, but I'm always thinking about, it's like, oh, they're going on now. Wish them well.
My biggest short play production was in New York, and I was in Colorado, and I wasn't able to get there, and it just killed me.
Yeah.
It just killed me.
Same.
And apparently it went off like great. Yeah.
My New York debut, I could not go to.
Oh.
But I was gonna say, back to the writing thing, that play that went to New York was written in response to a prompt, to an opportunity. I can't remember what they said. They said, write about this and send it in. And I sent it in, and it got kicked back, rejected. And then I saw this other thing called by this theater in New York, and I sent it to them, and they said, hey, we love it, we're gonna do it. So, if a prompt interests me, I'll write it without even thinking. I mean, it'd be nice if it gets in, but if I like the prompt, I'll write it. And for me anyway, there's a therapeutic side to writing 10-minute plays, because I've got like 3 full lengths I'm working on right now in various stages, and it's nice to get something done that you can look at in like 3 days.
I feel the same way, and that's why, like, if a prompt excites me, like the 7th prompt this year at Fusion excites me, it's so hard to get in there. They're like in Albuquerque, if anybody doesn't know, they have the 10-minute play festival every year. The 7, it's like the most popular one that everybody submits, and sometimes they'll do in New York, New Mexico writers, like reading of New Mexico writers. But this one excites me, so I'll write it, and I just have to turn over any expectations, right? Like, they'll probably reject me, but I've got this play now. I've done something, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe it's for something else
Yeah,
later.
There's a lot for it elsewhere.
Yeah.
And
But
There's
at
no
the very
wasted
least,
writing.
At the very least, I'm working on my craft.
Right.
Plus,
That's how I feel about it.
I like to have table readings of my plays. And
Yeah.
I have written my plays like 10 times. I mean, I've revised them. So even the play, Fearless Female Voices play, I went home and I changed that a little bit. And I thought about it today, I'm changing it a little more. So that's kind of the fun of it.
Exactly.
Having people hear your stuff and help you with it. So I think a lot of plays don't have enough 10-minute plays and also full-length plays. They just don't have enough readings, and they don't improve the plays enough. They think it's done, and it is done, but it could be even better. So.
Well, and classes, are great, a great opportunity to really work on your craft. Obviously, that's what classes are for. But it's especially in terms of getting feedback from the instructor and the other class members, it's really invaluable. So I will encourage people to do that. One thing I was just going to say, and Dan, I want to ask you a specific question about that. These festival acceptances, they're very subjective. I mean, obviously. I had a play I wrote that I submitted to, I actually wrote it for Benchwarmers. I'm not knocking Benchwarmers, because I get it, because I participated many times in it. Didn't get into Benchwarmers, but it got into the Samuel French Festival, which had 1,000 submissions. Benchwarmers maybe had 100. And I'm not saying it's a better play than anything else that was done or submitted. I'm just saying the selection process, I've been on the selection process side, and I happen to like something because I had some personal connection to it, so it's in the festival. I try to be objective. Obviously, if there are other problems with it, I'll look at that. But a lot of times it's very random, and that's why if you really want, like that person you're talking about that submits every morning, that's kind of what you have to do. You'll get in somewhere eventually.
Yeah.
I'll say I've been a reader for festivals, and think over November and December, I had to read like 100 plays, some of them full for 2 different competitions, and some of them were 10 minutes. One was a 1-act festival, and the other were full lengths. So for the 1-act festival, it was anywhere from 10-minute plays to, this year they couldn't be longer than 90 minutes, so it was called, a company out in New York called A's 4, and it was all about, it's about reproductive rights, so they had to be on a theme of that. But I will tell you, after reading 50, I start to skim, because I'm so, it's like I can tell you in the first 2 it's like, yeah, I've already read, you know, so many plays that I know I'm gonna select, but when they have so many plays to read, and there's a skill to reading plays. You know, some readers might be interns, right, and maybe don't yet know how to read a play, but even I was trained in how to read a script, and as an actor you learn that, but even I would feel bad, I'm like, I should just like pay full attention to this 15-minute play, but I already know from page 2 that this play is not very well written. It's already like not going to be included, and so I'm skimming the rest. But I wonder about readers that might go, like, not really be so burnt out and like not give your full. Yeah, Jennifer.
Well, that's a good question. How do you know a play is well written? What is it that gives it away? What is it that engages us immediately in a play? And I'm going to ask Dan.
Okay.
Because obviously you're putting on a lot of things, so you'd have to choose as well.
Yeah, so I think, especially with short audio pieces, they need to be written for the medium first. So you can't just send me a stage play and expect it to work for audio. So that's the first thing I'm looking for. Will it work in this medium? You know, if there's a lot of visual cues and stuff, that's not gonna work. Next is like this is all very pragmatic stuff, like how many characters are there? Do I have actors in my stable that can play these characters?
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, because I have a lot of actors that I know and trust. They have good audio setups. I know I don't have to coach them through that anymore. And then in terms of the writing, there has to be a really central, compelling idea that interests me. And like, it's kind of like that quote about art. I don't know, but I know what I like. You know, it's hard to say what makes a play well written when it grabs me in a way that.
I will say there's a kind of, and I see this with films too, there's a sort of craftsmanship that you can tell right away that this person has an idea that they're onto and they're executing in a way that's working for that idea. And you can tell that pretty quickly in the writing.
I can even tell it sometimes in the description of the characters.
Yeah, or the
You don't even
title.
get to the dialogue yet.
Yeah.
And then the set description, you can tell there too.
That's interesting. I want to move on because we're running out of time. I want to talk about sort of about opportunities that may have arisen for you as playwrights from short plays. And this can be in terms of expanding a short work, which some of you have already addressed, into a full length. But also, have you ever, I've had this happen to me twice where somebody wanted to make like a film out of one of my plays. The film never happened. But just like, I think Bill, you kind of touched on this, somebody, like as a calling card to another opportunity. In terms of expanding your play, I've pretty much been asked this every time I write a short play that people have liked. They always ask me, are you going to expand this play to a full length? Almost every time. And sometimes I've tried, and a lot of times it doesn't work. There was a short film that I showed at a festival last year that got a lot of awards, and it was made into a feature, and it got released on some streaming sites. The 15-minute version was so much better than the full length, because the material just wasn't lending itself to a longer form. So expanding can work if there's the right material. And before I get to you, Rosemary, I will say I took a Dramatists Guild class online, and the title of the class was called How to Expand Your Short Play into a Full-Length Play. We never touched on it. And the take back,
There's your answer.
right, the take back from that was, I don't know if there is a good way to teach it, or if there is a reason. I think the instructor, who was great, and it was a great class, but it was, maybe there isn't a way, there isn't like a specific answer. It either works or it doesn't. It's sometimes like trying to put a really tiny person into a larger person's clothes. There just isn't enough content there. Rosemary.
Well, this is a true story. About 5 years ago, I had a short piece in Fearless Female. It was Anne Lindbergh and her mother sitting in front of a radio listening to Charles Lindbergh give a speech, which was known as the Des Moines speech, which turned out to be anti-Semitic and really ruined Lindbergh. And there was a woman in the audience who I really admire and respect. She's passed on now. But I said, you know, I'm kind of interested in exploring this topic. Do you think that it is worthy of exploring? And I have spent the last damn 5 years. No, I've turned it into a full-length screenplay. And, you know, so I just totally took off from that. But sometimes I wish I just
Stay small.
stayed small.
Yeah,
Because it's hard to make something take off like that.
it can, yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had an experience, I had written something, I think, I might have written it in about 2008, and I submitted it, or sometime, I can't remember, sometime in the 2000s I wrote this, and I submitted it for the 2010 Estro Genius Festival, which is a festival in New York of female voices, and it was a 20-minute play, and I think that was their max, and it got selected. And it was a dark comedy with a patient, a new patient with a psychiatrist. And so that was just a standalone piece. And then I wrote a monologue for something else using a psychiatric nurse, who I called Nurse Hammer, instead of Nurse Ratchet. And she was reading the rules of and what to expect when you get into this low-income mental unit, psychiatric unit. And that was a standalone piece that got published someplace. And then it was years later that when Von Irving was the artistic director of the Santa Fe Playhouse, and he came out and announced that he was making a commitment that every year while he was there, the Playhouse would produce a play from a local playwright, and a full-length play, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta write something. And the deadline was like in 30 days. And I'm driving home, and I'm like, I gotta write something. Well, what do I want to write about? And I was like, mental health, like mental hospitals, because I've been in some. Not for a long time, by the way. So I ended up writing this dark comedy called Flight Plan, which got chosen, got produced. But I used that 20-minute scene, I edited it down, but that became part of the play. The Nurse Hammer monologue became part of the play. Even something else that I'd written as a prose poem became part of the play. Because I only had 30 days when I was like, and then I kind of built the play around that. But because it was something I was passionate about, which is kind of the brokenness of the low-income mental health system, so it came out. But I have explored that with other things, and it just, if I'm not passionate about it and I don't feel like it can expand, it won't for me. But
Yeah,
that's,
Vicki.
I just want to say, none of my 10-minute plays are worth making longer because they're just about one thing. And in fact, some of them are 8 minutes, so that's but I did make a 10-minute play out of a full-length play, the last scene. But people could kind of tell, you know, like, that seems to have resonance or something. You know, they could tell it wasn't a real 10-minute play.
There's only one 10-minute play in a festival that I've seen or merited longer treatment. You might remember it because Vicki's in Albuquerque, I'm here in Santa Fe. Where do we meet but in Kansas at the Drummers Conference? And she has a play in, I have a play in, but this other guy has a play in, and I can't remember all the details, but it was true. It was based on a character from the 1950s. He was like a semi-pro wrestler. He was kind of a redneck background. He was really involved in a lot of civic things, and he became the leader of the civil rights movement in his town.
Oh, wow.
And this was all packed into 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's good work.
And it was kind of interesting, it was fun, but everybody, all the comments afterward were, this is a full
Yeah,
play.
right.
Because
Down
of
in
him.
New Orleans?
Did he spend some time down, I think it was Missouri for a while,
Oh, okay.
but I can't remember it, it was really nicely done, but it just, it was awkwardly shaped. It was
Yeah.
shoved into 10
It needed to
minutes.
grow.
Yeah, because there was just too much going on.
Yeah, well, that's why a lot of you said one thing,
Yeah.
right, not 10 things. Dan, what about for you?
What's the question?
Just talk for 2
Oh.
minutes about anything.
In terms of expanding, there's one play that I wrote when I was in grad school called Not at This Address that is a one act. It's probably 50-minute runtime, and I always imagine there being a second act. I haven't written it yet, but I think about it often. And so someday I will make Not at This Address a full-length 2-act play with an intermission. In terms of like my shorter plays, like 10-minute plays, because I tend to write about a moment in time, it's not
Right.
bigger than that.
But you could use that.
Yeah, I
in
could
something
use
else.
that
Yeah.
within, some of them are just simple little vignettes, like two guys smoking a cigarette on the corner of New York City or something, you know, and having a weird conversation.
Right.
Yes.
Which is
so
a one
how
act,
much?
is a one act, yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
could you expect,
Zoo story.
how do you
Yeah.
expand Zoo Story, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so there's one play that I've written that I think I could expand, but
Yeah.
none of the really short plays.
I have one now that I'm hoping to expand this year, but generally, when I write something, I just think of it as what it is, and that's how it came out, and it's a short play. And the one that I'm working on now, I think there's enough going on that I could expand, but it's just about your motivation as a writer, right? I want to expand this, or I don't, I want to work on something else.
Yeah.
We have just a few minutes left, so I want to make a few announcements. Mim had mentioned that some of the people on this panel are going to be involved in a short play program, and we have cards that Marguerite is displaying, lovely. And the program is called People Have the Power, and it's actually inspired by the Patti Smith and Fred Sonic Smith song that I saw pre-election, when there was still hope in the world.
Which was playing on the radio when I was driving
Oh, really?
here.
Okay.
Yes.
Isn't it great?
Yes,
So-
I never heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the play a lot of people were talking about social justice themed plays. I wanted to do something post-election and also something to honor my mother, who was a social activist who passed away this year, around theater. And so these are short plays. There's going to be 16 local actors in it. There's 5 local directors. Rosemary is the only local playwright that is participating, just because that's how the program came together. But the other playwrights are from around the country. And it's going to be at Teatro Paraguas on April 11th and 12th, a matinee evening and then a matinee performance. And it'll hopefully be a really good example of what we talk about by the thematic short play program. Because the plays aren't just about social activism, they're about people that make a difference ordinary people that make a difference in their lives. And there's also, what was I gonna say? The plays are also, a lot of them are comedies. These aren't sort of solemn, depressing plays about, social justice. These are actually funny, irreverent plays. They're also touching and poignant. So you're gonna see a huge variety of content around social justice. So I hope that you'll be able to join us for that. And then Ken Robbins, is it Ken or Kenneth? Ken, would you like to talk about your class? Is it this summer?
Yes, in June 3rd through the July 1st, it's a class called Writing the 10-Minute Play.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be offered through the Santa Fe Community College Continuing Education Program. And it'll meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 11:15.
Perfect.
So I have a little announcement, if you'd like to pick one up after the
Great.
session, I'd be more than happy to do that. And just as a brief introduction, I spent over 50 years teaching at the university level, and so I'm retired now, and I use the 10-minute play as a wonderful way to introduce students to the idea of theater.
Yeah.
Ah,
You know,
lovely.
it's rather than reading Tennessee Williams write, you're in the next Tennessee Williams play. So, in other words, I have a lot of experience doing the teaching process, and I look forward to sharing it with anyone who wishes to join me.
And that's a whole other wonderful way to use theater in general, but also short plays in terms of education. And so I'm sorry that we didn't have time to cover it more, but maybe another panel will be able to. I'm going to be doing a class actually right after your class at the community college, which is called Memoir is Playwriting, or is it Playwriting is Memoir? And it's about how to develop personal stories into a dramatic play form. And so if you're interested, it'll also be in the catalog for the community college. And then I also run a monthly Playwrights discussion group, which is on Zoom. And I wanted to do it on Zoom so that people from all over the country, or all over the world technically, could join. And every month we talk about a topic around playwriting. And it's going to be very varied. A lot of people here have participated. And so if you're interested, you don't really have to be a quote-unquote playwright. If you just want to learn more about playwriting, want to talk to other playwrights and learn more about it, you can let me know and I can put you on the email list. And it's the last Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. And we have come, I did such a good job, it is 7 o'clock. We're ending on time. I wanted to thank our panelists for giving us their time tonight and, sharing their thoughts and experience. And also again to thank the Theater Lovers Club, Nim and everyone here from that, and Theater Santa Fe. And we'll see you at the next play event or the next panel, and yes.
I'd like to ask a question.
We have about 1 minute.
I think we have time.
Okay.
Could we stay another 10 minutes? Cause
So,
I don't think we can stay like 5 minutes.
5 minutes, so
Okay.
we'll
so
have
I've
a
seen
few
really
questions.
a number of times the short films nominated for Academy
Me too,
Awards.
yeah.
And also benchwarmers.
Yeah.
And the one thing as part of the audience that I have trouble with is they're happening like one after the other after
Yeah.
the other. And I wonder if any playwrights have any ideas on how to have either build a little bit of time in between them or make them all memorable to the audience.
Well, I think a lot of that's kind of a programmatic question. I mean, I think when you're doing, like I went to the Oscar shorts this year and it was kind of a rough watch. They were great, but the 3-hour documentary short program about really heavy issues was hard to get through. I think it is a programmatic question, and how do you, and Dan, we can like to hear your comments about this too. I like the program that we're doing in April is 7 plays. Some of them are 6 minutes, some of them are 8 minutes. It's going to be 90 minutes, no intermission. And I think that's a good amount of time to digest. Now, what Talia did with the female voices was to do a kind of marathon setting where you could kind of come and go as you wanted to. You see what you need to. And it's, there are people that stay for the whole thing, but yeah, I think it's really just about selecting the right plays and the right time length so that we can digest them all. And yeah, you do kind of forget what you've seen. Which play was that? Was that in the first one that the man killed his wife? Oh no, that was something else. So you want to individuate the content that you're seeing, and it's hard. Dan, how do you?
I try,
You have
so
to go, okay.
with the soundbite
Thank you.
thing, I would do no more than 6, and if it went 70 minutes, that was probably too long, just because in this digital age, when you're consuming digital stuff, you expect it to be over faster.
Yeah.
Now, in person, I think is a different story, but again, I think it's like, how do you program something that's interesting, where they're all interesting and unique enough, and how do you do that in a theme also? That's a good question. And after a while, do all 10-minute plays end up feeling the same? They shouldn't, but.
Well, and it's interesting, I meant to mention this before, but about like doing, like how interested are theater companies in doing short play programs by one author, where it's the author that's the the connection, it's not the theme.
Right.
And I find a lot of them aren't. They actually want to see a full-length play, or they want to include one play in a program. Or unless you self-produce, which is a lot of people are doing. And a lot of people are doing it here, I'm doing it here. Talia does, great productions, and so it's another option. Yeah, we'll take two more quick questions, yeah.
I get the feeling that a lot of people feel that, I'm getting the feeling, these are creative people in front of us. The concept, the characters, the plot all arrives full grown on the half shell from the ether. But I'm wondering how much of the motivation is the desire to present a monologue, a thought, a concept, or to stand up a comic routine that you individually want to do. What is the inspiration?
So I think what you're asking is, what is our inspiration to write plays?
Yeah, well, is it an external thing that arrives from the ether? Wow, I gotta do this, or I feel like doing this. If I'm making myself
It's
clear.
almost the same thing to me. I just have an idea and I want to express it. So if it stays on my mind like 3 or 4 days, it could be a 10-minute play.
And who's to
so.
say whether it's yours or the ether?
Well, it's ideas
It's
or
one thing,
feelings,
yeah.
emotions, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's just everything.
Social
So,
media.
and if it stays on your mind, then you can write a play about it. If it leaves your mind, then I wouldn't write a play.
I often start, my inspiration comes from locations sometimes. That's
Yeah.
probably the most, often, is I'll think of like a submarine. And write a play about people trapped in a submarine, for example. Or, a Central Park or something. And that's where the idea starts. I'm like, okay, so what's weird and interesting that can be happening in that location? And that's kind of where the very germination of the thought is for me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, last year we did a playwriting panel, which wasn't, exclude short plays, you were doing that. And, Robert Benjamin said that he starts with a conflict.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really, really, good place to start because, I don't know why I'm so inarticulate. That's why I'm a writer.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Aaron. Thanks to all of you.